What is an ossuary, and how were they used in the 1st century AD? In today's episode, I will tell you about an archaeological artifact regarding the villain of the religious trial of Jesus, none other than Caiaphas. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Faith Affirming Findings, a podcast dedicated to sharing with you
the incredible discoveries from the field of biblical archaeology.
These findings will strengthen your faith, affirm the historicity of Scripture, and provide you with unique insights into the culture and background of the Bible.
Now, here is your host, Associate Professor of Bible Exposition at Dallas Theological Seminary,
Dr. Paul Weaver.
Today I am recording again from the campus of the Word of Life Bible Institute, where I am teaching the book of Daniel. I'm standing here in the Charles Ryrie Study Library. Charles Ryrie was the chairman and professor of systematic theology at Dallas Theological Seminary for many years. He also taught here at the Word of Life Bible Institute on 21 different occasions. When Dr. Ryrie was promoted to heaven, the Charles Ryrie Foundation gave Word of Life all of Dr. Ryrie's personal files. These files included personal letters, teaching notes, sermons, and even the manuscript to his study Bible. While serving as the academic dean of the Word of Life Global Bible Institute, I had the privilege of overseeing the digitizing of these files. We digitized over 2,500 of Ryrie's personal correspondences, teaching and preaching notes, personal writings, and much more, so that you could have access to them, could be made available to the general public. You can find those files today online at ryrielibrary.org. Your time is valuable, so let's get to this week's faith-affirming finding. I want to tell you about the discovery of the Caiaphas ossuary. Caiaphas, as you know, was the high priest who led the religious trial of Jesus before the Sanhedrin. You can read this account in chapter 26 of Matthew's Gospel. He was the second most powerful person in all of Judea, second only to the prefect, Pontius Pilate, who we happened to discuss in last week's program. When the religious leaders feared that the Jewish people would accept Jesus as their king, and feared that as a result the Romans would destroy them and their nation, Caiaphas was the one who unwittingly prophesied, "It is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." At Jesus' religious trial, when Jesus identified himself as the one who would come in the clouds and institute the kingdom, Caiaphas is the one who tore his robes and said, "He has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy." Well, in 1990, the grave and ossuary of Caiaphas was discovered. A construction effort was underway to build a water park in Jerusalem. During the excavation, a tractor fell through the roof of an ancient burial cave. It is apparent that the grave had been previously pilfered by grave robbers. Some of the bones were scattered, ossuaries were broken and smashed, and pottery was thrown all around. Fortunately, the southernmost tomb where the Caiaphas ossuary resided was not discovered by the grave robbers. God's sovereign hand. Therefore, it, along with one other ossuary, remained undamaged and in its original position. Now, an ossuary is simply a bone box made of limestone. Some ossuaries were very simple, and others were very ornate. The practice of using ossuaries inside of tombs started around the middle of Herod the Great's rule and ceased by AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed. The discovery of a coin minted by Herod Agrippa I, dated around 42-43, was also helpful in fixing a Second Temple burial date to this site. Finally, the pottery discovered there, along with the ossuaries, also dated this ancient burial site between 100 BC and 100 AD. During the Second Temple period, the common practice was to observe 2 burials. The first burial would be immediately upon the death of the individual. Approximately 1 year later, when the body would have decomposed and the flesh decayed, a second burial was performed. The family of the deceased would return to the burial site. They would gather up the bones of their deceased loved ones and placed it in an ossuary. The final step was to take an iron nail and scratch the name of the dead loved one onto the side of the ossuary. One of the ossuaries discovered was large and ornate. The elaborate design indicated that the individual whose bones were in that bone box was wealthy and important. The design involved 2 large circles with a flower design in between. The 2 large circle patterns include 6 smaller circles in the shape of rosettas, 5 evenly distributed with 1 in the center of the 5. Some of these rosettas were painted orange. The lid was vaulted, decorated in a similar fashion, and painted orange as well. Certainly the remains of someone important were within it. The decorative ossuary was not the only thing that was of interest to the biblical archaeologists. On either side of the ossuary was an inscription in Aramaic. The Israel Museum states, the name inscribed upon it in Aramaic appears twice, once in the form Jehoshaphat, son of Qeiapha, and once as Jehoshaphat, son of Qeiapha. Scholars believe that this ossuary belonged to the high priest Joseph Caiaphas, who is chiefly known for his involvement in the arrest and trial of Jesus, described in detail in the New Testament. Of course, as already discussed, Caiaphas was the very powerful high priest and enemy of Jesus. Yet, the Caiaphas of the Bible is not referred to as Joseph. The writings of Flavius Josephus are helpful in putting the pieces together. When speaking of the high priest, Josephus calls him Joseph, who is called Caiaphas, of the high priesthood. Joseph was his name, a very common name at the time. Caiaphas was his nickname, distinguishing him from all the other Josephs of the first century. The ornate decorations, the dating of the tomb, and the ossuaries, and the inscribed name twice written on it, on the ossuary, all point to the powerful and wealthy New Testament high priest known as Caiaphas. How important was this discovery? Some have labeled it one of the top 10 most important archaeological discoveries ever uncovered. The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ is the foundation of the Christian faith. Apart from it, as Paul says, we are the most pitied of people. The discovery of the Caiaphas ossuary affirms one more historical detail of Scripture regarding the most important events of human history, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. Once again, biblical archaeology affirms that the Bible is historically reliable and worthy of your careful study. That is your faith-affirming finding for the week.
Faith Affirming Findings podcast is a listener-supported podcast devoted to affirming your faith in the reliability of Scripture and illuminating your understanding of Scripture.
If you would like to help sponsor the Faith Affirming Finding podcast,
You can make a tax-deductible donation of any amount, large or small,
at faithaffirmingfindings.com. That's faithaffirmingfindings.com and click on the Give tab.
We hope you'll join us again next week for another exciting Faith Affirming Finding.